This week, Bank of America Securities is holding its global macro conference here in Toronto, and I know there's a lot to think about in the day-to-day that's impacting the macro story for economies around the world for this year. But there are also some big themes that could reshape the story of world economies and the markets over the long term. Haim Israel is head of global thematic investing research at BOFA Securities and joins us here in studio. It's nice to have you with us.
Pleasure to be here.
We were talking before we went on air about the fact that you have so much more to discuss beyond just trade tensions that could have a dramatic impact on where our world goes over the next decade and beyond. How do you approach this idea of global thematic investing? What goes into that?
Everything that's going to change our world for the next 5, 10, 20 years, global macro and micro megatrends is going to change our world, here to stay, and going to impact us good or bad, unfortunately, for the next 5, 10, 20 years, and really going to shape our future.
So this idea of a megatrend, how do you characterize what a megatrend is?
A megatrend is a theme that is here to stay, that is global, and going to have to change our future for the next 5 to 10 years. When we say 5 to 10 years, some of them are changing in the next 5 to 10 months, but it's definitely going to impact our life and going to shape our future.
Are there any obvious examples of megatrends that would be at the top of the list?
Of course. For example, technology right now, AI, one of the biggest revolution humanity have ever seen, is going to come and change the next 5 to 10 years and going to impact us in a way that we don't even understand yet.
And obviously the stock market has been talking a lot about AI over the last couple of years because they've seen these businesses that are growing very quickly as a result of it. But give us some examples of how economies around the world are reshaped by something like AI.
This is going to be the biggest revolution humanity have ever seen. I'm a big believer it's going to be bigger than the smartphone, bigger than the internet revolution. It's really taking down the intelligence of cost to zero. With AI today, we can start producing more drugs, more chemicals, more products. We can do rich simulations. We can change dramatically the job market. We can increase productivity up to 10 to 15% of global GDP if we'll use it in the right way. It will require a lot of investment. It will require countries to start investing in the technology. Countries that are going to be far ahead and going to make the right investments are going to have a huge edge versus countries that are not. We're going to have to shape the job market, the education market. Everything is about to change. If you think about it, now in the palm of my hand, I have more processing power than ever before. I have more data than ever before, and I have a device that not only can give me data, can actually do tasks for me in a level which match human intelligence.
And forgive me if this is too simplistic, but when I think about the trade tensions right now, I think about countries trying to stand up for themselves and make sure that they have manufacturing opportunities and investment for manufacturing jobs in their respective countries. But we haven't heard a lot about what you're saying in that dialogue. I mean, do you think that for countries putting more of a priority on, to your point, the ability to do a lot more per se with less is a bigger conversation to have around job creation for economies than where a particular manufacturing plant is based? Or
definitely, this is going to be behind the scenes of everything that we see right now in the global geopolitical sphere about deglobalization, about countries trying to be more independent. We call it the theme of tech wars. If you think about AI is, as I said, one of the biggest revolution out there, and countries are going to defend it. Countries that are leading the revolution will try to defend as much as they can, reshore and protect the technology as much as they can. As a result, what we are seeing is that every country on its own, countries will, A, chase over resources, will we try to be self-supply. We are heading into a world that we will need so many more resources, and countries are going to be very protective about those resources. We call it the theme of moving from transition to addition. So countries will have to be self-supply on energy, on resources, on skills. We're not talking about skills, about around the technology itself. We think this trend can actually increase deglobalization trend, can inflate deglobalization trends.
And obviously the politicians weigh in on this from time to time. They have the loudest voices, the biggest platforms. But even when we're covering the market day to day, we listen to what the political leaders are saying, but we also care about how those in charge of managing economies are responding, like central banks as an example. Do you think we should be hearing more from central bank leadership around the world about all these changes if the world is going to dramatically shift over the next decade?
We should. We are not. The technology is moving so fast, the progress is moving so fast. Look how much we managed to achieve in 2 years, that what we found is that the regulators, central bank, agencies, everybody that should actually lead this revolution is far behind. We're in a fascinating situation that this progress is happening so fast in warp speeding, and the establishment is so far behind and does not understand the revolution.
We're almost out of time, but I'm sure people who watch, who are investors, are curious about how they should be thinking about investing based on those trends. What would be your advice?
My advice is going to be, first of all, let's look at infrastructure. We are just at the beginning of the revolution. We'll need so much more infrastructure. If it's technological infrastructure, if it's, of course, around energy, we need more water. No one's really talking about that. We'll need more natural resources, so there will be way more investments. We'll need more bandwidth. We'll need a lot of other things that are leading to investment decisions.
Okay. Haim, appreciate you breaking it down for us. Thanks for stopping by.